Iran just drew a red line the size of a crater.
In a chilling new warning, Tehran has declared that if the United States launches a military strike, Iran will respond by going all in on developing nuclear weapons.
This isn't just posturing. This is a hard pivot.
An open declaration that Iran's nuclear restraint, already fragile, has a clear trigger point: American bombs. For decades, the Islamic Republic maintained a thin veil of ambiguity. We could build nukes, but we won't.
Now they're saying, cross this line, and we will.
The implications are staggering, because once that Pandora's box opens, there's no going back, not just for Iran, but for the Middle East, for global non-proliferation, for energy markets, and for the balance of power from Washington to Tel Aviv to Riyadh. Let's break this down. What Iran's warning really means, what led to it, and how dangerously close we are to a regional inferno no one can control. Iran's new warning, a nuclear doctrine out in the open. In a statement that rattled every intelligence agency on Earth, senior Iranian officials declared, if the U.S. launches a military attack on Iranian soil or assets, Iran will make the strategic decision to pursue nuclear weapons.
Not might, not consider, will. This is a seismic shift in Iran's doctrine.
For years, Iranian leaders walked a careful line, enriching uranium just below weapons-grade levels, developing ballistic missiles, but denying any intent to weaponize.
Now,
that mask is off.
Iran is publicly declaring the link: military aggression equals nuclear breakout.
This isn't just bluster. It's deterrence in plain sight, and it completely rewires the strategic calculus for the United States, Israel, and NATO.
Why now? Timing is everything.
Iran didn't say this in a vacuum. This threat comes after a string of Israeli airstrikes on Iranian targets in Syria and Lebanon, U.S. naval deployments back into the Red Sea and Gulf of Oman,
drone and missile strikes by Iranian proxies on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria,
and ongoing pressure on Tehran over its nuclear enrichment, which is already at 60%, just a blink away from weapons grade. Add to that an increasingly unhinged Israeli leadership openly mulling a strike on Iran, and Washington quietly greenlighting expanded joint drills with the IDF. Iran sees the writing on the wall. War is inching closer, and they're now saying, clearly, if you try to destroy us preemptively, we'll make sure next time you can't.
This is nuclear deterrence being born in real time.
The strategic shift. Nuclear ambiguity is dead. Up to now, Iran played a dangerous game of nuclear ambiguity. Enrich, bluff, delay, deny. They never crossed the line, but they got close enough to be taken seriously. It was leverage, a bargaining chip.
Now they're saying, we're done bluffing.
Push us, and we'll do it for real. That move changes everything. It means the U.S. has to weigh every strike against the possibility of triggering a full nuclear program.
Israel's covert sabotage ops risk provoking actual warheads.
Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt might accelerate their own nuclear ambitions. And global non-proliferation, already on life support, could flatline.
This is a policy evolution. Iran isn't saying they want nukes. They're saying they'll use nuclear weapons as retaliatory insurance.
And that concept, retaliatory deterrence, is precisely what allowed North Korea to become untouchable. Iran is watching and learning.
If Iran goes nuclear, what happens next? Let's game this out. If Iran decides to weaponize, here's what that path could look like. Enrichment ramps to 90% within weeks. They're already at 60%. The rest is engineering. Breakout time drops to near zero, meaning they could build a warhead in less than a month.
Weaponization happens underground. At hardened facilities, the U.S. can't easily bomb without a full-scale invasion. Missile integration follows. Iran already has ballistic systems capable of hitting Tel Aviv, Riyadh, and even parts of Europe.
Nuclear deterrence is declared, similar to Pakistan in the late 1990s.
At that point, the entire game changes. Israel would lose its nuclear monopoly in the region.
The Saudis, already in talks with China and Pakistan for nuclear technology, would almost certainly pursue their own arsenal.
And the U.S.? It would face a choice: accept a nuclear Iran, or prepare for a war with no clean end. Why the U.S. can't afford to ignore this? Washington is stuck in a trap of its own making. On one hand, it can't allow Iran to build nukes. It would destabilize the entire Middle East, empower Iranian proxies, and shred America's credibility as a security guarantor. On the other hand, striking Iran might be the very thing that causes them to go nuclear. Classic catch-22. The Biden administration's current approach, sanctions, diplomatic begging, and indirect talks, has failed. Iran has continued enriching, expanded cooperation with Russia, and deepened military ties with China.
They're preparing for confrontation, not compromise.
And now they've said it clearly. Military escalation will push them into nuclearization. That leaves Washington with two options: escalate and risk proliferation.
De-escalate and appear weak. Neither option is clean.
But the longer the U.S. kicks the can, the more likely Iran is to act on its own timeline, not ours. Israel's nightmare scenario. For Israel, this changes everything.
A nuclear Iran is not just a strategic challenge. It's an existential threat.
The Israeli defense doctrine, since Ben-Gurion, has been clear. Never allow a hostile neighbor to acquire weapons of mass destruction. That's why Israel took out Iraq's Osirak reactor in 1981. That's why they hit Syria's secret reactor in 2007. And it's why Mossad has been waging a shadow war against Iran's nuclear program for over a decade. Cyber attacks, assassinations, sabotage. But if Iran crosses the nuclear threshold in retaliation for a strike, it means Israel's actions become self-defeating. Their aggression causes the very outcome they fear most. That's the nightmare. Provoke a nuclear breakout and lose deterrence overnight. This is why Netanyahu is suddenly facing blowback even within his own intelligence community.
They know the risks, and they know Iran is now serious.
The global fallout, the end of non-proliferation. Iran's new red line sends a signal far beyond the Middle East.
It tells every rogue state, authoritarian regime, or sanctioned power on Earth: the best insurance policy against regime change is a nuke.
Just ask North Korea. Ask Pakistan. Ask Libya. Oh wait, you can't. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program, and NATO bombed him into oblivion. The lesson is simple: never disarm. Never trust the West.
Get the bomb.
Stay in power. If Iran goes nuclear, the floodgates open. Saudi Arabia will demand its own arsenal. Turkey may push the envelope under Erdogan.
Egypt, with Russian help, may follow.
Japan and South Korea may revisit nuclear options to counter North Korea and China.
Non-proliferation is already fraying.
This could finish it off.
Why this isn't 2006 anymore?
Back in 2006, when Bush labeled Iran part of the axis of evil, the U.S. still had the power to dictate terms.
Now?
The U.S. is overextended in Ukraine, facing a China-Russia-Iran alliance and dealing with record domestic dysfunction.
And Iran?
They've adapted, built deeper underground facilities,
expanded regional alliances, developed oil trade routes that bypass U.S. sanctions,
embedded themselves in global weapons and energy supply chains. They're no longer isolated. They're integrated into a new post-dollar multipolar order.
And if they go nuclear, they'll join the small club of countries too dangerous to invade. What should the U.S. do now?
There's no perfect play.
But there are principles to follow. Acknowledge the red line.